Good morning and welcome to the Subcommittee for Senate Study Bill 3143, a fetal heartbeat bill. Just setting up some ground rules. We do have an hour before we need to be done, so we're going to take the first few minutes and allow some opening comments from senators on the subcommittee. Then we will allow other senators who have joined us, if they wish to share comments, to share comments. And then we'll open up to any interested parties or groups to speak. If you do wish to speak, please form a line back in the back here, and we will use the microphone that is at the end of the table. And you'll need to press the button on the microphone and speak directly to it. I don't believe I'll put a time limit on the amount of time to speak for each individual, but just be cognizant of the fact that we are on the 1 hour time limit to get back into session for the senators. So I appreciate everyone being cordial today and discussing this topic. I'm here to hear from you and hear your thoughts. And with that, I'm going to give a brief description of the bill and then give opportunity for Senator Peterson or Senator Schultz to give some opening comments. This bill prohibits abortions where a fetal heartbeat can be found by a physician using an abdominal ultrasound. The physician shall inform the pregnant woman of the heartbeat in writing and inform her that an abortion cannot be performed. The pregnant woman shall sign a form acknowledging receipt of the information. An abortion is prohibited unless, in the physician's reasonable medical judgment, a medical emergency exists that is deemed to be necessary to protect the life of the mother. A physician who knowingly and intentionally performs an abortion in violation of this law commits a Class D felony with a maximum sentence of up to 5 years in prison. A charged physician may seek a hearing before the Board of Medicine regarding the determination of a medical emergency. The findings of the board are admissible in court. Record keeping is required for the physicians regarding fetal heartbeat tests. A pregnant woman is not criminally liable under this bill. The Board of Medicine is to adopt rules to comply with the bill. The bill repeals various code sections currently used to determine the legality and timing of abortion, and the bill also includes a severability clause. That is what the bill does. Senator Peterson, would you like some opening comments at this time?
I would. Thank you, Senator Sinclair. This bill would jeopardize maternal health care for every woman across the state, and especially women in rural Iowa. This bill is dangerous, and this bill is unconstitutional. This bill doesn't just go after women, it goes after doctors, it goes after girls, it goes after moms, it goes after grandmas, and it goes after Iowa families. This bill will impact every Iowan who gets their period and every woman who doesn't get their period. It is a direct attack on women's health care across our state. If this bill were to become law, our state would lose its only residency program for OBGYNs. What does that mean for Iowa women? It means fewer providers providing OBGYN care across our state. 1/3 of the University of Iowa's OBG residency graduates remain in our state to practice. Our state is ranked next to last for OBG physicians per capita, with 2/3 of Iowa counties not having an OBG physician. We are only ahead of Arkansas. This bill will be a devastating blow to women's health care across the state for all women and girls who want to take care of their bodies and ensure they have access to the best medical care for their reproductive health, something girls have to think of from the time they get their period until the time they die, which would be decades. This bill redefines medical emergency for women and only women. It takes away a woman's ability to get health care that is in her medical best interest. There are no other provisions in Iowa code that say an Iowan cannot access medical care unless it is to prevent death, not even for Iowans in prison. I cannot imagine telling a doctor what she or he can or cannot do to take care of a patient. This bill would put a doctor at risk of going to prison for doing what she or he believes is in the best interest of a patient. It will be another reason why doctors choose not to practice medicine in the state of Iowa, which is already dangerously low in the number of OBGYNs we have practicing. We are already seeing the negative results of the GOP family planning bill that is costing taxpayers millions of dollars and resulting in less care for Iowa women and families. The GOP family planning program is making Iowa a contraceptive desert. This bill will make Iowa a desert for OBGYN care. That concludes my opening remarks.
Thank you, Senator Peterson. Senator Schultz, do you have opening comments?
I'm glad to see everybody here. I'm glad to see the interest in this. I have always centered my attention on the life issue at life at conception, life at fertilization, and that is actually where my heart still lies. However, as the culture still moves toward a pro-life view, which is what I believe has been happening statistically for decades, ever since I believe the horrible Roe versus Wade decision, which even the authors have admitted was bad law. As the culture moves toward a life position affirming the fact that killing is never health care, that we find ourselves in a situation where even those who are seeking to end the Holocaust of death that we find ourselves in, and it's a culture of death that permeates all the way through. It's even moving to the point where so-called death with dignity laws are actually just ending life prematurely at the end. We find ourselves in a culture where, because of abortion, because of the a la carte death that the industry has brought us, that the culture is being repulsed by that and finding that no, that life does matter. So while I've spent all of my time on conception, fertilization, at what I find to be my personal end goal, this is the first time I've been on something less than that, and I think that this is an interesting point at which this may be what our culture is ready for at this moment. And I think it handles, as the subcommittee chair of the Life at Conception bill last year, I learned what the roadblocks were, the issues at home that I heard from constituents, the issues within our caucus, and through that method, now I find myself on a subcommittee that addresses all of those issues. And this may be the right spot for us in Iowa here at this time. And I guess I would only reiterate again, stopping a beating heart is never health care. So that's my opening comment.
Thank you, Senator Schultz. Do any of the other senators who have joined us wish to have some comments at this time? Thank you all very much. So at this time, I would be happy to open this up to conversations from the audience. Remember, line up at the back here, and we will just go in the order that you appear until we run out of time. Please join us.
Thank you. Excuse me. I haven't talked much yet this morning. Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Danny Carroll, and I represent the family leader. We're registered in support of this legislation, and we thank you for holding this subcommittee and for giving us this opportunity to make comments. It's been said, and I think it bears repeating, that unborn child in her mother's womb, she's a baby. If she's not the baby, then we really don't need to be here. We're talking about something else entirely. But what we know and what we continue to learn is that unborn child, she's a baby. As I thought about my remarks here this morning, I thought about talking about court decisions. We could go back 40-some years and talk about Roe versus Wade. Thought about talking about medicine and the practice of medicine. We could talk about scientific research, the moment of fertilization that Senator Schultz referred to. I thought about talking about public opinion. We could go into media reports and news coverage. Back in December, the Des Moines Register asked the question, where are the children? I think the headline was Childless Iowa. We could talk about that. We could talk about the politics of this issue. We're in an election year. Elections are coming up. All of that really takes us off the subject about that unborn child and the fact that she's a baby. Like Senator Schultz, the family leader, myself, focused on what we have known for decades, that life does begin at fertilization. We only need to ask our grandmothers. They knew that long before 1973. We do, however, support this step. This is a step in the right direction. And by detecting a heartbeat, Madam Chair, we confirm one more time that with that heartbeat, that unborn child, she's a baby. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please join us next in line.
Thank you. My name is Maggie Twitty, and I'm the Executive Director of Iowans for Life and a founding member of the Coalition of Pro-Life Leaders. In Iowa, death is determined when an individual has sustained irreversible cessation of circulatory or respiratory functions. In other words, the heart stops beating. It is not hard, then, to draw the logical conclusion that when there is a heartbeat, the person is alive. According to embryology textbooks, the human heart is the earliest functioning organ, beginning at 4 weeks in utero. In Planned Parenthood's explanation of D&E abortions, dilation and excavation, I quote, "In later second trimester procedures, you may also need a shot through your abdomen to make sure the fetus's heart stops before the procedure begins." Though Planned Parenthood does not give an explanation as to the reason to stop the heart, the Orlando Women's Center website provides the reason. It assures nearly 100% that there will be no evidence of a live birth when the delivery takes place. When organizations who perform abortion stipulate the need to stop the heart, are they not, in fact, acknowledging the child in the womb is, in fact, alive? And if alive, does that child not deserve the protections all human beings deserve? On behalf of the Coalition of Pro-Life Leaders and Iowans for Life, I urge passage of this bill to protect the most vulnerable of our society. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please join us.
Hello, my name is Jamie Burch. I'm here to represent Planned Parenthood of the Heartland and Planned Parenthood voters of Iowa. We are opposed to this bill. This bill would ban safe and legal abortion from the moment a fetal heartbeat is detected through an abdominal ultrasound. This is typically around 6 weeks of pregnancy and before most women even know they are pregnant. Like other abortion bans, this legislation inserts the government into the personal lives of Iowa women. However we feel about abortion at any stage in a pregnancy, a woman's health should drive important medical decisions, not extreme politicians that are obsessed with controlling women's bodies. Abortion is an intensely personal decision, and we should not apply blanket laws to personal beliefs. Furthermore, this bill is unconstitutional, and it intentionally goes too far. The detection of a fetal heartbeat is an arbitrary measure that politicians are weaponizing in order to advance an extreme anti-woman agenda. Questions about when life begins are personal. We can't really all agree on that. And politicians should not be making this decision for women. The motivation behind this bill is clear. To create a vehicle to challenge Roe versus Wade. If this bill passes and is signed by our governor, it will open the door to endless litigation, clogging cash-strapped courts, and Iowa taxpayers will have to spend even more of their hard-earned money on a lawsuit. Passing legislation that blatantly challenges Roe versus Wade would be a waste of taxpayer money on a divisive, unconstitutional bill with dangerous consequences. James Bogard, someone I don't always agree with, said, democracy must be something more than 2 wolves and a sheep voting on what to have for dinner. Iowa women are tired of being the sheep. Watching as this Senate comes after women's rights over and over. Iowa women should not be forced to suffer the dangerous health consequences of a petty and personal agenda that a handful of lawmakers are forcing Iowans to participate in. This will be a divisive and lengthy legal battle, and I urge you to reject this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you. I would just pause here and encourage future speakers to avoid name calling. That is not productive, and it has no bearing on the conversation. So I would appreciate toning that down a bit. Thank you, sir. Welcome.
My name is David Sickle, and I am a pastor of a church in Urbandale, and I serve in a volunteer capacity as the chair of the board of directors for the Interfaith Alliance of Iowa. The position of the Interfaith Alliance of Iowa is that this bill infringes upon the rights of women that are long established and deeply held, and that it codifies a particular religious point of view held by a particular religious bloc and does not allow for the religious freedom that we value so highly in this nation. As a pastor, I have been in a lot of hospital rooms and a lot of ICUs where decisions were being made about life and death. And families had to come up with some means of putting together something that would be in keeping with their sick members' wishes. And in one particular case, the family made the agonizing decision to withdraw life support from an elderly gentleman who really had no hope of recovering. And that was done. And the family waited, and they waited, and they waited. And the heart kept beating and beating and beating. And finally, one of the family members thought to mention the gentleman's pacemaker. In disconnecting the machinery, they forgot about the pacemaker. And since they didn't do it at the time when the machines were disconnected, it was too late to do it then. And they suffered through an inordinate, painful experience. Now, I think if you ask that family, they would say, a heartbeat does not mean there's life. And I grew up on a farm here in Iowa, and, you know, there were the science projects where somebody brought in a calf heart or a pig heart and a battery and some electrodes, and by golly, they could make that heartbeat. This is very simplistic thinking, frankly. The gift of life is a wonder, it is a mystery, and the heart is an excellent indicator of all that is good about life. It pulses and surges when there's excitement. It aches when there's pain. But just a beating heart is not life. Our grandparents knew that too. Patrick Henry said, and we are fond of quoting him as saying, "Give me liberty or give me death." What do you think his definition of life would be? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Welcome.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Lisa Bannon. I'm an OB/GYN physician. And I know there are many others here who are speaking to the legality and constitutionality of this bill, as well as the social implications, so I wanted to shed a little light on some of the medical aspects that are particularly troubling. The requirement for an abdominal ultrasound in this bill, there are many factors that go in. It's not just as simple as putting the ultrasound on and seeing a heartbeat or no heartbeat. There are many factors that go into whether that abdominal ultrasound can detect the heartbeat. The earliest that you can reliably detect a fetal heartbeat with an abdominal ultrasound based on LMP dating, which is the common medical standard for gestational dating, is about 8 weeks, but that's under optimal circumstances. And what does that mean, optimal circumstances? When the ultrasound probe is placed on the woman's belly, it has to go through the abdominal wall to reach the uterus and go through the uterus to reach where the fetal heartbeat is. If a woman is obese, there's much more tissue to have to go through. They're not going to be able to detect the heartbeat as early in someone who's obese. If the uterus itself has structural issues such as fibroids, which create the wall to be much thicker, they're not going to see the heartbeat as early. If the uterus is retroverted, which means it's tipped to the back, away from the ultrasound rather than forward, it's going to be more difficult to see that heartbeat. So not every woman is the same. Not every woman has the same anatomy. And so not every woman is going to have the same gestational age at which the heartbeat can be detected. Therefore, this is not going to be applied equally to all women. Other factors that can affect the ultrasound would be the condition of the equipment. Is it a newer machine? Is it an older machine? Has it been kept up well? The skill of the sonographer and experience of the sonographer makes a difference. There are many factors that go into it. That's one aspect that I find troubling in this bill. Another is that, let's say you have a thin woman with no fibroids and you're maybe going to be able to see that heartbeat at around 8 weeks. Well, if that woman has irregular cycles, she may not know that she's pregnant until 8 weeks or 12 weeks. If she normally has a period every 2 to 3 months, she may be 12 weeks along before she even realizes that she has missed a period. Additionally, but there are many women who have spotting or bleeding throughout their pregnancy that can mask the fact that they're pregnant. They think that they're having periods when, in fact, they're having early complications of the pregnancy. And women who conceive while on contraception. It does happen. There is no perfect contraception. And if she conceives while she's on contraception, she won't have a reason to check a pregnancy test. If she's on the pill, she may continue to actually have periods despite being pregnant. There are many reasons why a woman would not even know to seek care until after this 8-week cutoff. One other aspect that I have not heard mentioned is that, excuse me, fertility clinics, the reproductive endocrinology and infertility clinics, if they have a patient who has, let's say, 4, 5 more embryos that are developing in the woman's womb, that jeopardizes the pregnancy. It is very unlikely that pregnancy is going to continue to the point of viability. So sometimes they'll do what's called a fetal reduction procedure, where they selectively will damage the embryos so that hopefully only 2 or 3 survive, so that the woman has a better chance of moving forward with the pregnancy. So this would affect those women seeking fertility treatment as well. So ultimately, I feel that these legislators are trying to insert themselves into the exam room and into that physician-patient relationship without having medical training, without understanding the intricacies of what goes into these decisions that a physician helps a woman make. And I am opposed and urge them to not move forward with this legislation. Thank you. Hi, my name is VandenBosch. Sorry, I'm incredibly nervous right now.
Leah, if you could get a little closer to the microphone.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm here representing Planned Parenthood, and I stand with Planned Parenthood, but I'm also representing myself, my body, and my life. This is really difficult for me. I do not have experience in politics at all, but I have experience here. I was actually raised in Orange City, Iowa, and so I know the pro-life argument better than the pro-choice. And the first mention of Planned Parenthood, my experience was in my high school chapel. We had a group that would go and they would pray in Planned Parenthood's parking lot and protest, and that's all I knew. And I didn't know anything more until I needed Planned Parenthood. I could get into the religious argument. I could pull up all of the Bible verses, and we could talk about all of that, but I'm just going to spend my time with sharing my experience, because that is my strength in this argument.
For 10 years, I struggled with an eating disorder. I lost my period for years because I was so malnourished. So thank you for who I just followed, because I think it was a God thing and giving me a little strength to speak. But I struggle with depression, anxiety, and when I found out I was pregnant, it was the worst thing that has ever happened to me. And I was alone, and I was scared, and I did not have any doubts with what I was going to do, because I knew that I had to put myself first, and I had to put my mental health first. This is very raw and fresh for me. I actually just had to tell my parents 2 nights ago, because I knew that I would be speaking today, and they deserve to know first, and now I am dealing with so much shame and disgrace, and it's incredibly hurtful. But what my parents don't realize is that if you pass this bill, and this was in effect when I got pregnant, I would not be sitting here today, because I know I would have taken my own life. So if you are so concerned with life, think about the life of these women. I don't even have a story of rape or incest. There are stories that are so much more horrific to listen to than mine. But this is my story. I would not be here if I didn't have this choice. This isn't just about murder or the Bible or your religious convictions. This is about life of the women in Iowa, and 1/3 of women have experienced this. How many stories have you not heard? And it's because we're not speaking, because we're so ashamed. And you're not helping. And I don't want to be sharing my story. I mean, I'm so proud to be sitting here today and taking the time to do this, but it is so painful for me that I feel like I have to stick up and represent these women. I'm praying to the same God that you are right now this morning, and he's pushing me here to speak to you and show you a different side. So please just consider my perspective. Think of your daughters, think of your granddaughters, and stop thinking of your grandbabies that aren't even born. What would you do if your daughter or your granddaughter was in my life? Would you protect these cells, whatever you think of, this fetus, would you protect that? Or would you protect your daughter? Think of that, please, please, before you make this decision. This is not the way that we need to be going right now, and you are hurting us. You're hurting the women in your state, and I will not stop speaking until you start listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Leah.